שלום לכולם, ברוכים הבאים. It is a great pleasure for me to host here Dr. Richard Bandler, my mentor and trainer. This is a very special opportunity for us. Dr. Bandler agreed to give us a special webinar, especially for us in Israel. And this is like, wow, amazing for me. I'm very excited. So Dr. Bandler, a lot of thanks for you to having us here and giving us your gifts. And I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
In your new
Before
book,
you ask the question, I would like to say something, which is I know you see a lot of the news about what goes on in the US and all the anti-Semitic stuff. And I want to tell you that is not the large majority of America, that most of these people protesting can't even spell Palestine on the stuff they're writing. And they misspelled things like Sharia law, which is odd. These are Harvard students, which tells you that Harvard has gone down the drain. But 80 other colleges have totally denounced what Hamas has done. And the majority of the people I meet and the normal Americans and most of us are behind you 100% and will stay that way. And part of the reason I'm doing this is telling you that you're headed for some hard times, but you've got to stand your ground. There should be no pauses of any kind until you take care of this. And that's what most Americans believe and most Americans feel, unless they're ignorant. They were asking people on TV the other night what river they were talking about, and most people couldn't answer the question. They're singing from the river to the sea, and they don't even know where the river is. And they didn't know the name of the sea either. So the squeaky wheel gets the grease a lot of the times. But don't look at that and think that's most of us. Most of us are not in that place. But you go ahead, you ask your question.
Okay, so a lot of thank you for that. So Dr. Bandler, in your new book, you talk about healing trauma and working with PTSD. And most importantly for me is the work to do with resilience. So how do we as NLP practitioners in Israel can use the NLP and the tools and the amazing technique and technology you've created to help all the Israeli, our brothers and sisters and friends and families and clients to deal with all this situation, with the trauma, and to develop resilience for the coming period, which is not going to be that easy.
Well, yes, I will warn you in the beginning that you're going to see a lot more of it than you would expect, because after the wars that America has fought, soldiers come home. Well, they train them to go to war, but they don't train them to come home. And a lot of these people are going to have seen things that are very, very difficult, if not impossible, to ever forget. And, war changes people, and not just the soldiers, everybody who is affected by it in every direction. And part of the reason it does that is that anything that induces adrenaline and ups adrenaline, and a soldier has to stay in an adrenalized state, they have to stay alert. It makes their memories more vivid and larger. And part of the process of getting people over trauma is getting them to know how to shrink things down. That when I get people who have been traumatized, whether it's in war or rape, or I get a lot of police officers, a lot of soldiers that come out, the suicide rate of soldiers in this country is off the charts. I tried to start a project with somebody to start retraining soldiers when they came back. And unfortunately, the military guy that was in charge of it went into the hospital for a physical or something and ended up dying. And the whole project got shelved. It was a real shame, because I feel really bad for people that serve their country and come home and are left homeless on the streets of America. And I'm hoping that Israel will do a much better job of that. You do a much better job of most things, so it wouldn't surprise me. Um, Now, the thing is there's a neurological trick to treating people with trauma. When you ask people about things they keep thinking about and it keeps traumatizing them, typically if you ask them, is it life size or larger than life? It's almost always larger than life. And it's closer than it should be. And when you ask people what their favorite color is, and you have them put a border around that memory, the minute they do that, it switches it from being an eidetic, that is remembered image, to being a constructed image. And what that does is it gives people control over it. By the very act of putting a border around something means that you put a 2-inch border around a huge memory, you kind of have to shrink it down a little bit just to do that. And then when you get them to shrink it down to the size of a coin and blink it black and white, it doesn't just affect that memory, it affects every memory that feels similar to it. That the visual cortex and the kinesthetic cortex have an intimate relationship. They overlap about 40%, depending upon the person, anywhere from 30 to 40%, which means what you see and what you feel are intimately related. In the cortical networks of the brain, billions and millions of networks, there are pods that work out circularly, and those connect. So this feels like this triggers this, it triggers this, it triggers that. Now, once you shrink a memory down suddenly, and it needs to be done quickly, the brain does not learn slowly. I know psychiatrists like to take 5 years to do something, but in NLP, we try to get it down to a matter of minutes. And when you shrink something down suddenly and start blinking it black and white, it takes something that goes in a loop. And every time they think about that memory and it freaks them out, it goes in a loop until it habituates. Because any nerve that you fire repeatedly will eventually habituate. It's why your eyes jiggle and vibrate all the time, because otherwise it would go blank. And when they attach pictures to the eyeballs so that the picture moves with the eyeballs moving, it disappears. Now, a woman named Dorothy Kimura did those. She was a neurologist that did those experiments. We mentioned it in The Structure of Magic in 1975, when it was published originally by Science and Behavior Books, that the ability to start to control these images gives people the ability to begin to make trades. Because the amount of time people spend thinking about bad things, worrying about bad things, chews up the currency of life. The currency of life is how you spend your moments. And the trick is to reduce the number of moments you spend worrying, as opposed to the amount of time you spend planning. You see, if a siren goes off and you have a plan of where to go, you're prepared. So your brain tells you, get there and go to the right place, right? But if you just sit in your house when it's not going off, worrying about what's going to happen and if it's going to happen, and if it could happen, when you have no control over it, you're chewing up time of your life instead of making better plans about what you're going to do for the rest of your life, or actually doing something that makes your life better. Now, there's going to be a lot of things that are tragically unreversible. When people die, as Robert Anton Wilson, who's a famous science fiction author, said to me when my first wife died, he said to me, all love stories end in tragedy, that somebody's going to be left behind. And so all of us are going to have to face the reality that we will lose loved ones, whether they're pets or people, and it's going to happen. And the question is, when it happens, do you think about their death or do you think about their life? And, when I lost a pet, I was sad when I lost my pet. But when I think about that pet, I have nothing but good memories, because I would have rather spent the time I did with that pet than to have never had it. And the same thing is true about people. I had a woman who lost her son to cancer, and she spent 5 years grieving and ignoring her other children and her husband. And when her husband brought her to me, I told her, I said, look, I'm supposed to be the best hypnotist on the planet. Do you want me to hypnotize you and give you amnesia for having ever had this son? Then you'll never have to feel bad again. And she went, oh no. And I went, good, because I wouldn't want to do that. But however, losing your other 4 children and your husband seems wasteful to me. You have to be able to get from, instead of thinking about the process of dying or the end of somebody's life, what you need to do is to see yourself in those memories, make them small and push them off into the distance, and then blow up so that you see what you saw in all the good memories, so that you feel and can enjoy the life that was there. Now, for soldiers to come back, one of the things that happens to them is they were so adrenalized when they were in the war or in combat that what happens is those memories are huge and bright. They feel very real. And when they go back and they look at their children and their wife, they don't have that intensity of feeling. So what you need to do before they go back, or even after they're back, is to make these pictures larger than life and shrink these down so they're about that big. And you need to do it quickly so that you make the intensity of their personal life more real than the life that they've been through. Because a lot of boys and a lot of girls are going to go into this war and come out with a lot of crap in their head. And it takes up a lot of space, it takes up a lot of time, and a lot of civilians are going to go through the same thing. You know, they're going to have things that happen, and even things they hear about happening or things they see on TV that are going to be so horrendous, it's going to be hard to forget them. But you don't need to forget. You see, the woman never forgot her 19-year-old boy. But when she thought about him, she got to enjoy, because even your house, if your house is under threat and you start to look at your house and feel afraid, you have to remember how safe you felt there for years and make that bigger and brighter. What makes us resilient is focusing on what we have control over. See, we have no control over where a rocket randomly lands. We have no control over what happens in the past, but we have all the control in the world over what happens in the future. And if we don't maximize and take it, then we make mistakes. When I try to explain this to Americans who keep telling me we need a ceasefire in the Middle East, and I always ask them the question, I go, how long have the occupied territories been occupied? And most of them don't realize that when you were going to your first NLP seminar, the Israelis have already left. They just don't know that. They have some mythical idea that you guys have been sitting in Gaza all of this time torturing people. And that's because of the media. That's stupid. That's not what happened. And, they voted in Hamas and now they're paying the price. We voted in Biden. We're paying the price. That's the trouble with making bad decisions about elected officials. And all of us have got to do the best with what we can. And we have to think about our own lives. And the one thing we can control is our thoughts. Change the way you think, it changes how you feel, and therefore changes what you're capable of doing. When you have bad feelings and they're spinning in your body, you spin them faster and feel worse. And then you slow them down and spin them in the opposite direction and make yourself feel better. You can re-engineer your feelings. You can re-engineer your thoughts. You can take better control of your life. That's what NLP offers everybody. But especially in a situation like this, there are going to be a lot of people that need it. I hope you got trained a lot of people over there, because there's going to be a lot of need for it. You got your work cut out for you, is all I can say. And, I've trained now people for some 53 years since I started doing training. Training in NLP began somewhere in the late 70s. We started certifying in the late 70s. And, I've trained hundreds of thousands of people, and it's not nearly enough. So now I have lots of trainers like you that are out there doing and training other people, because we need to take control of our brains. Most of these bad things occurred because of stupidity and bad education in people's childhoods. These people, Lord, don't have enough manners. And, if we started teaching young children manners and to have respect for human life, because there are 7 billion of us living on this planet, we have to learn to get along till we can find a few more planets, and then we can send all the people that want to fight to one of them. and they can fight with each other and leave the rest of us alone. That, this is a situation where we have to do the best with what we can. And those kind of tools, all of my books are full of tools. This new book is my 35th book. And, the reason I keep writing books is I keep learning more better ways to do things. This book is all about how you get clients better. And instead of thinking about fixing them, you think that every person that comes in is a work in progress. And believe me, there's going to be a lot of work in progress going on. There are going to be people that have some bad ideas, people that have bad memories. And banishing bad memories is something that we've been doing in NLP for a long time. And it's not that you forget the memories, is that you don't let them affect your feelings. Because if we make our choices based on bad feelings, bad things will happen. We want to make good choices based on good decisions, based on accurate information.
Great, amazing. So one more question here. So, how do I help? How do I work with kids? So, because with kids, their awareness or their the way to talk to them, it's not the same as with with adults, and making movies and moving them around. What can we do with our skills if we look at kids which are now, let's say, they are now stressed out? They're more kids, youth, they're more stressed out, they're more agitated, and I want to do with them some kind of work at the moment they are very agitated. So how can I use the NLP skills to do that?
Well, I find working with children is easier than working with adults because they're not as stupid. That it takes years to become entrenched in your own stupidity. That with kids, for them, the idea of having imagination is part of their life. And using that imagination so that they can learn to make themselves feel calmer. That to me, it's very easy. I teach a lot of them about their dreaming arm. I go, do you know about your dreaming arm? And they go, what? And I lift their arm up and tilt it cataleptically, have them close their eyes and go into a mild trance and to begin to imagine things, to see themselves being better able to cope, to see themselves being able to be calmer and step inside it and bathe themselves in those feelings. So that when they start to feel out of control or they start to feel anxiety, I also convert anxiety while they're in that state into take all the tension from all of their body and move it to their mouth into a smile. Because on the motor cortex, almost a third of it is the muscles in the mouth. And all the rest of the body, the 2/3 that are left over, run every other muscle, which means that since all of these things are connected together intimately and neurologically, if I can take all of the stress hypnotically and turn it into a great big smile, have them take a deep breath and relax, every time they start to have anxiety, they'll start smiling and relaxing and thinking about what they can do about whatever situation they're in, whether it's run away, whether it's hide, whether it's go talk to their parents, or whether it's to go outside and ride their bicycle and enjoy the sunshine. That good decisions really come from having better control over your feelings. So I work with kids a lot. And to me, this is kind of the way I go about it. I don't find it's hard to talk to children. They seem to know more about what's going on in their head than most adults.
Okay, Richard, Dr. Bandler, I want to thank you so much for this. There's a lot of stuff you gave us here. I've managed to process some of it and I'm waiting for the recording. I want to thank you very, very much for your time.
I have one more thing to say.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you all a hypnotic command. Stand firm.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Bandler. Always a pleasure learning from you. I want to thank you in the behalf of the people from Israel. And hopefully when peace comes, maybe we're going to be able to host you here in Israel. So that will be
And hopefully
agree.
it will be sooner than everyone expects.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. I would say thank you for the people. תודה רבה לכולם, תודה שבאתם. אני מקווה שהצלחתם לראות את כל הדברים שהוא עשה מעבר לרק מה שהוא דיבר. הוא קיפל כל כך הרבה דברים בפנים. היה מדהים. Dr. Bandler, thank you again. And I hope we'll meet again soon.
Okay. Take care, son.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.